It's Friday again, I would say, and a good day to be alive for the business community. 19th day of August 2022. And surely, like I said, we will be discussing the SMB Inside after the break, and that is what we're going to be having at this particular moment. And then just a few days as COSASE and the Uganda Airlines Board, appeared before COSASE, that is this very week. It has been a huge topic of discussion amongst the Ugandans on social media and various mainstream media, if I am to say so. And most of the Ugandans have been coming out to throw insults, others insightfully discussing this as well, saying how best can we regulate the Uganda Airlines. But the biggest topic of discussion was the salary cap and the top officials, especially the new CEO, the newly appointed CEO Jennifer Bamturachi. Okay, but besides that, the committee will meet again next week on the same matter of the Uganda Airlines, and they will come up with a final verdict of that. That committee is chaired by Honorable Joel Senyonyi, and then also having quite a number of other members of parliament and ministers onto it. And now, this time around, we're discussing commercial flying pilots in Uganda, as we're going to be looking at this particular field of aviation. And in studio, joined back again with Barije Andrew to have more of this insightful one, where the questions are licenses of a commercial flying pilot. Well, I think if you're to look back in the days, every other young child out there wanted to be a pilot or a doctor or a lawyer.
Exactly.
It was a profession people looked at as
up to, yeah. You know, being a pilot is quite a costly venture. First of all, the studying alone is very, very, very important. But despite the study, you having the study, I mean, I think it's very important for you to get a license, because these are lives of people. Of course, we used to study that air transport is that's why we used to, it's risky, okay, you know, as compared to other types of transport. So despite you having the degree, probably you have a master's pilot, it's very important that you go and take the steps that are needed for you to get the licensing. And of course, there are different planes. You know, we have choppers, we have these Airbuses, and so many others. And of course, the skills are different. The person that is flying an Airbus is not going to have the same license with the person that is flying just probably a chopper. So you find that, because also to get a license, there is a step you go through, there is a process you go through, because at the end of the day, this is the lives of the Ugandan citizens that we are talking about here.
Okay,
yeah.
And truly is thoughtful in that way, because when you look at flying aeroplanes in here, I think we have pilots in Uganda, but most of them are not flying planes here. Some of them are already flying international aircrafts in there, and then we've got those who are actually flying planes that are actually running on airfields in Uganda, and also the Entebbe International Airport, and we've got aviation courses as well.
Aviation, yeah,
in here. But you also mentioned something about the expensive nature of the sector.
Yeah,
even during education, I think before one is even referred to as a pilot, you have to go through a lot of courses, and they are very expensive.
Courses, you go to the flying schools, you know, it's quite very, very heavy. It's like how you study law, and after you go to law development center, the same applies to this. So that's how delicate and tricky that profession is.
And pretty much when you look at the situation here, is that we do have aviation training schools in Uganda, but most of them, I should say, do not give out accreditations to pilots. It is just a beginner's license. It's just a beginner's training, whereby someone has to upgrade, just like Andrew has mentioned, something to do with the LDC. After you go to a university, you have to go through a different kind of training after some years. So for you to at least come out and say you're a pilot, there should be some international training.
Quite very
degree with you. That clearly reveals that you are a certified pilot. And now this insight is actually highlighting the issue of licenses a trained pilot should have acquired to fly a plane. I believe it's just like any other job, or you need to at least have some documents with you.
Yeah.
and some experiences.
Some experience. And of course, with the documentation, I don't want to say that necessarily that the documentation is all, because it's funny that you can find that people that don't have these documents can actually have the skills, but this is just to secure. I mean, people have to feel secure.
Yeah.
I mean, you're boarding on that plane and you're secure. But however, still, I believe by the time you get that document, you've been tested and proved that you can fly this plane without endangering the citizens of Uganda. So it's very important for a pilot to make sure that you go through the steps that are needed.
And I believe
to get that.
You mentioned something about it, because when you look at it being a sector that is very sensitive, for example, aviation entirely, people who go by plane will still tell you there are people who are actually scared of using plane because they know it rarely. It is very rare to find an accident of a plane, but once it is there, it is also
very
difficult.
fatal, yeah.
Yes, it's very difficult to save a life.
Save a life, yeah.
In there, so you need to be a very experienced person to be in that plane, and in most cases, and in most of the areas, when you look at some people actually look at quite a number of pilots that we have in the country, you will find out that most of them are not here. Most of them are either working with big planes,
big planes, yeah.
The Emirates, looking at planes like the Ethiopian Airways, working for big platforms.
Exactly.
And I think this is something that goes back to our aviation sector. I still don't know what we are missing, but the issue of licensing, I think, is to enable those using the plane or the consumers to at least know.
They are safer.
Because you would have to find a driver, let's say a pilot, it's just like a driver. If you find out that your driver has a license or a driving permit, at least you're safer that he has gone through some accreditation from the government.
From the government, yeah. And I think that all comes back to the authorities to make sure that we upgrade our services to ensure that we can actually reach that global standard. You know, I really feel sad. It saddens me so many times is that you can have a degree in Uganda, not only just in the pilot, but if you say you want to go and work from a foreign country, I mean, you may have to go through another training, probably a month or a year, to ensure that you match the standards of those people.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the challenges, which is really faced by the aviation industry. Honestly, there are many students right there, but how many really succeed to come out and they say, hey, I'm a pilot?
And there's an argument here. Someone has just informed me that to experience of a pilot is actually measured with the number of hours
you fly
a plane. So not the years you've been flying. So it depends on the hours. That is how they measure your experience.
Sure.
And they're like, now this one can manage this type of plane. That is where they would say this one can manage to fly an Airbus or the other can't, and all that. And remember, we also have pilots who are good at flying the mini planes that we have here in our airfields and airstrips. I think we have many of those here in the country.
Yeah.
And then also there are those who can at least fly the private jets and all that. But there are stages to these things. Someone who can fly a small plane, I think, can't definitely fly an Airbus unless he's actually going to go through a lot of training and getting these licenses for accreditation.
I would agree with that, but you know, I believe the plane is, it's a matter of, the concept still stays the same. The only difference is the size you're driving, probably. And of course, that creates this psychological fear that, okay, it's like if you've been driving a Wish, let me give an example, and hey, tomorrow they give you a bus. The truth is, it's the same principle, but maybe what could be relevant is the experience for you to at least maybe, you may not take an Airbus with the people inside, with the passengers, but you can actually have a test on that. But it's just something that can't really take so long for you to catch up with that Airbus kind of feel, but there is not really any much difference.
And usually, by the way,
Yeah.
is that commercial airplanes are normally taken up whenever they are flying. They normally have 3 people in there, in the cabin crew, I should say, that are the main eyes. For example, there is a first captain and the co-pilot, the engineer. So those are the people who actually man the commercial plane in there. And next week, by the way, we shall be getting more of an insightful discussion of commercial flying pilots in Uganda and these licenses. So we shall be looking at it from an expert point of view, where we shall be having a guest to discuss more about this one. Now, the little pinch of our discussion here is bringing us to our SMB Insight from Lukman Mabuya Ndusa, who is the Director, Flight Operations, and giving us more on the licenses a trained pilot should have acquired in order to fly a plane. Let's have a look at this one.
I'm the subject of the CV that has just been presented. I have an ATPL, Airline Transport Pilot's License. In flying, we have several licenses that qualify you to the duties that you undertake. You begin with a PPL, Private Pilot's License. That's if you choose to go to fly. And you can choose to go and fly at any stage of your passion. These days, of course, at the time I went, I was after senior 6, after Mwiri. I was in Mwiri, a sub house. And I went to flying school. After an interview, was selected by the Director of Civil Aviation at that time. They were where we have Impala House. That's where they were housed at that time, during our days. So when you go to flying school, you go through a PPL course, which is Private Pilot's License, which you should accomplish in about 50 hours of flying. You are tested. If you are able, you progress. If you don't, they terminate you, because flying is not by luck. You must be able to deliver the equipment safely. Otherwise, you ruin the equipment and also destroy lives of human beings. So the training is tight and it has parameters and you must comply. Remember at our time, we went 10 Ugandans and only 3 of us completed in short flying school. That's how bad it can be. So after PPL, and PPL is just a private pilot's license for you to fly for leisure, not for reward, not for commercial. So after PPL, if you have scaled the bar, you are now strive for commercial pilot's license, which is the first commercial license that enables you fly commercially. Most of the co-pilots start with the commercial pilot's license. Also, it is by law, a person shall not be rostered scheduled to fly commercial unless he possesses a commercial pilot's license. Furthermore, as she said, there must be instrument rating. You must be tested to be able to fly in instrument conditions. That is when the weather is marginal. It's raining, it's windy, it's at night. Worse still, one of the power equipments have closed. Maybe you have only one engine. You must be able to demonstrate that ability to fly that aeroplane in that condition. And you learn, and then that's when you can get a job as a commercial pilot. You remain a co-pilot for most of the time, especially if you join an airline like Uganda Airlines, because our aeroplanes are all 2-man crew or more. But if you're going to fly a caravan like those in Kajansi or in flying school, for that matter, commercial pilot license can do your career. That's it. But if you want to now upgrade and become a jet captain like I am, Bombardier, DC-10, Airbus, then you must get an ATPL, Airline Transport License. That's what graduates you to be able to command a big, which is a commercial aeroplane. And that's my level. I'm also a trainer. I train pilots, and I'm recognized by CAA, as it says. And my records are very clear in CAA. Anybody who wants to clarify can go to CAA, say we want to see the file for Captain Lukman. They will show you all the documents and where I am. So I train pilots, And I've also been a manager as director of flight operations before in other airlines, and also a flight safety officer. So I applied for this position because I felt I met the requirements, and that's what was required at that time.
Okay, could you confirm the qualifications of the other, pilots, since you supervise them? Are all of them tick?
The
Qualifications
pilots,
of the pilots that we have.
The one under you.
Yeah, most of them have commercial licenses. Actually, all of them have commercial licenses. We will only get you into the airline if you have a minimum of a CPL-IR, commercial pilot's license, instrument rating. That's what we need.
Okay,
And that's
so,
what you come out with from Soroti.
okay, so we probably don't seem to have a very big issue with the technical people, the pilots. Our issue is with the administrators. Anyway, we will get to the bottom of these issues. Now, there are people whose CVs we have not gotten.
And that is Lukman Mabuya Ndusa, the Director of Flight Operations, Uganda Airlines. Well, when you look at what he has said, that you will stay a co-pilot, for instance, if at all you are flying the Uganda Airlines, and that is something which I believe we've discussed here, you may not be recognized as a senior pilot unless you've served as a co-pilot for quite some time, as you're gaining more experience on how to fly big planes.
Yeah, this thing, I've been watching documentaries so many times, and we see these incidences where planes crashed. But when you find that when the investigations were done by the authorities, majority of the cases, according to what I've been observing, 60% of the cases comes back to the pilots. And this experience which he has been saying, he mentioned whereby you can fly that plane in case of a certain weird condition that comes in, how as a pilot you can handle the situation, and even you calm the passengers, because they know that something wrong is about to happen. Probably the weather is changing. So that all comes with your experience. How are you going to control the adrenaline? Actually, it's all adrenaline that causes the panic, and majority of the 60% of the global accidents. Sometimes the plane can have an issue, but there is a way you can persevere through. But now here comes a place, and you sense that something is not right. You're the pilot, you're the first to panic. And with a plane, I guarantee you this, once you have not flown one, that with what I hear from the friends I interact with, once you panic, it's the end of it all. So it's very important to see now, like that gentleman being part of the commanding the Airbuses. It all comes with that experience whereby he can actually handle the situations regardless of the hardships where probably there could be something wrong, and he's able to tell the passengers, hey, calm down, relax, everything is going to be okay. So it all comes back with the experience that you be the co-pilot. At the end of the day, you learn from the seniors. Yeah, that's what I believe. It all comes back to that place of aviation, and ensure that you get that acknowledgement, regardless of the qualification you could be having at campus. Probably, I don't want to say campus, but the flying schools. You need to be a part. You need to have experience. There are scenarios where we have weather issues, and that is, and actually you could be landing on the radar, and they tell you first hold on a bit in the sky. So it all comes back to your experience to ensure that you have that way you can control your adrenaline and ensure that you can put everything in motion and you don't harm the passengers, and of course the entire people that are onto that plane. Yeah.
And also there's more information coming in is that most of the accidents do happen. Most of the accidents that happen happen at the V1 stage. That this V1 stage is when a pilot is not supposed to fly the plane, or has received information late that you can first wait to fly the plane because maybe
and it's already up.
Something, and he has already taken it up.
Yeah.
And in most cases, that they sense an experienced pilot on how many V1 stages he has survived or in such situations. And then there is also a time when the headwinds that happen when someone is dropping the plane or when the plane is actually now heading to the airport. And then sometimes it's because of issues to do with miscalculation of weather. In terms of weather forecast, maybe the forecast was not perfect, and it hits them, and then you find out that the pilot is not to blame, but at the end of the day, the weather conditions that were not well forecasted. Remember, with forecast, you just predict. The chances are high that you'll predict the rightful situations, but then sometimes it's unpredictable and you end up failing. But like I mentioned earlier, is that with this issue, we shall be getting an expert of the sector to give us an insightful discussion about this so that we can get deeper into it. And for all those who have been using the planes, I think by next week, we shall be understanding more about this one. So just keep your eyes glued on Smart Means Business, Monday to Friday, as we'll be giving you all of this from the aviation world and understanding more from the pilot's perspective, you as a passenger, what do the cabin crew members do, and all those things. Those will be coming in later on in the show come next week, as we'll be following up on the same situation. And stick around now. After the break, we get into the weekly topic roundup with Barija Andrew Steele and looking back at the top stories that were making headlines here on Smart Means Business. Good morning.